Cinderella. Once upon a time, there was a young girl who lived with her widowed father. Eventually, her father remarried. His new wife had 2 daughters of her own. She was mean and spiteful to the young girl, and so were her daughters. They made the girl do all the housework, eat scraps, and sleep by the fireplace among the cinders and ashes. Because she slept in the cinders, they called her Cinderella. One day, a letter arrived from the palace. All the women in the land were invited to attend a grand ball, where the prince would choose a bride. Cinderella's stepsisters were very excited. Her stepmother was sure one of her daughters would marry the prince. She made Cinderella work night and day to make them as beautiful as possible. Cinderella washed and curled their dull hair. She cut and shaped their ragged nails. She stitched their ball gowns, and she polished their dancing shoes until they shone. Cinderella longed to go to the ball herself, but her stepsisters just laughed. "You go to a ball?" the elder stepsister said. "But you don't have a pretty dress." "You go to a ball?" laughed the younger stepsister. "How ridiculous! You are always covered in soot and cinders." Tears ran down Cinderella's face as she helped her stepsisters into their dresses and jewels. At last, they left for the ball. Cinderella sat alone by the fireplace. She cried and cried. "If only I could go to the ball," she said through her tears, "and be happy for just one night. I so wish I could go." Cinderella had barely finished speaking when there was a sparkle of light in the dull kitchen, and there stood a fairy. "Don't be afraid, my dear. I am your fairy godmother," the fairy said, "and you shall go to the ball." Cinderella stared in amazement at the fairy. Quickly, she dried her eyes. "Really? Can I really go to the ball?" she asked, barely daring to believe it. "If you do so, I say, all will be well," the fairy answered. "I'm used to doing as I'm told," Cinderella sniffed. The fairy godmother told her to bring a pumpkin, 4 white mice, and a black rat. Cinderella hurried to the garden to pick a pumpkin. She found 4 mice in the kitchen, and she caught a rat sleeping in the barn. With a wave of the fairy's wand, the pumpkin turned into a gleaming golden coach. Cinderella gasped in astonishment. "It's beautiful," she said, "but who will drive it?" The fairy waved her wand again, and the 4 mice became 4 handsome white horses. She waved her wand a 3rd time, and the rat turned into a tall coachman. "How wonderful!" Cinderella cried. "But I can't go to the ball in these rags." "And you won't go in rags," her fairy godmother cried. She waved her wand, and Cinderella's rags turned into a beautiful ball gown. Glittering glass slippers appeared on her feet. Cinderella looked lovely. "Now off you go," her fairy godmother said. "But remember, all this will vanish at midnight, so make sure you are home by then." Cinderella climbed into the coach, and it whisked her away to the palace. She had never been happier. Everyone was enchanted by the lovely stranger, especially the prince, who danced with her all evening. Cinderella enjoyed herself so much that she completely forgot her fairy godmother's warning. Suddenly, the palace clock began to strike midnight. Bong, bong, bong. Cinderella picked up the skirts and fled. The worried prince ran after her. Bong, bong, bong. She ran down the palace steps. She lost one of her glass slippers on the way, but she didn't dare stop. Bong, bong, bong. Cinderella jumped into the coach, and it drove off before the prince could stop her. Bong, bong, bong. On the final stroke of midnight, Cinderella found herself sitting on the road beside a pumpkin. 4 white mice and a black rat scampered around her. She was dressed in rags and had only a single glass slipper left from her magical evening. Even if it was a dream, she said to herself, it was a perfect dream. At the palace, the prince looked longingly at the glass slipper he had found on the steps. He could not forget the wonderful girl he had danced with all night. I will find her, he said to himself, and I will marry her. So he took the glass slipper and set out to visit every house in the land. At last, he came to Cinderella's house. Her 2 stepsisters tried and tried to squeeze their huge feet into the delicate slipper, but no matter what they did, they could not get the slipper to fit. Cinderella watched as she scrubbed the floor. May I try, please? She asked. You? Laughed the eldest. You didn't even go to the ball. Everyone may try, the prince said. Cinderella sat down. Her foot slipped easily into the glass slipper. The prince took Cinderella in his arms. You're the one, he said. Will you marry me, please? Cinderella's stepmother and stepsisters were furious. It can't be her. She's just a servant. She dresses in rags. But at that moment, the fairy godmother appeared and turned Cinderella's rags back into the fabulous gown.